Here where I live, gas costs close to $5 a gallon. It's been this high or even higher for several years now. What if I told you that the high cost of gas is a consequence of a crime?
This is a very typical anti-market hit piece by the incredibly disingenuous people over at More Perfect Union. It just drives me crazy how dishonest this is. The first thing I'm going to tell you is that this guy, based on the gas prices he puts out in this video, lives in California. So he's going to blame this on a very specific couple of factors, but he's paying more than everybody else, which we'll get into that in a minute.
And it's costing you thousands of dollars a year.
That's the implication of a blockbuster new case brought by the Federal Trade Commission against one of the largest oil producers in the United States.
We went off of the evidence.
Now, this is important. This is against one of the largest oil producers in the United States. Now, we're going to skip ahead here to about 4 minutes and 40 seconds. We're going to get halfway into this video before we get into something that's kind of relevant.
Nationwide.
Just, it's not worth it. Triple than what I used to pay.
$9.
Over $9 a gallon.
Again, I said we're based on the prices that are put out in this video. They're out in California. First of all, that's an important thing to keep in mind here.
Over $9.
And you would think that when that happens, you would see production dramatically increase, particularly in the Permian Basin, to try to take advantage of higher oil prices.
So the Permian Basin is the largest oil producing area in the United States. It's essentially Texas. It's the largest oil producing area in the country.
But they didn't do that.
Experts say demand has just outpaced supply.
And then in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, and that drove another oil price spike.
We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy.
And so
Hold on. We're banning oil imports from Russia. Russia's a huge producer of oil. So there's a global market for oil. And if you cut off a massive producer, guess what you're going to do to oil prices? You are going to push oil prices up. Now, let's keep in mind that at this point, we had already sanctioned Venezuelan oil. We're sanctioning Iranian oil, right? There's extreme limits on Iraqi oil, or at least there used to be. I don't know if there's still to this day. We're not allowing the development of Anwar, right?
oil went up even more. And still, the people who had control over whether to invest in oil production in the U.S. said, we are not going to invest no matter what.
Isn't that your job, to add more production? That's what we're being told. No, our model has changed.
So what happened? Why didn't the Texas oil companies ramp up production?
The price stayed up because these companies were coordinating to restrict output.
So this is what gets me. Nowhere in this video are they going to talk about what the government did to restrict competition in the oil marketplace. So when a free market person comes on here and says something like government regulation prevents competition in the marketplace, which creates artificial scarcity, which drives up prices, what I see in response is always, oh, well, corporations, record profits, record this, record that. This whole video is about these couple of companies operating in the Permian Basin in this one area that are preventing they're not producing more oil. He goes on to say that what he wants to see is $60 to $70 a gallon oil. That's about the price. The reason he wants to see those prices, which, by the way, from a historical perspective, that's about the right price. That's about what oil should cost. So when gas was $9 at the pump, you weren't getting $60 or $70 per barrel oil. So they don't talk about that. They don't talk about the actual prices that are taking place in the oil market and the pump. What they're talking about is there's $9 a gallon gas. They're offsetting that against $100 to $150 oil per barrel costs. So it's very disingenuous. Second, if this one group of people is controlling the prices, this is why this guy he's intimating that the reason he's paying so much for gas is because they're controlling this oil market, these group of people. Well, why am I paying so much less for gas? If that's the sole reason for it, why am I paying so much less for gas? I never paid anywhere near $9 a gallon for gas. they're controlling the oil market. Why is my gas so much cheaper? Or is he paying more for gas because he lives in a place where the government is making it more difficult for him to buy gasoline, where they're making it intentionally more expensive for him to buy gas? That's what's happening. That's why he's paying those prices, because the government is eliminating competition and while at the same time making it more difficult to deliver fossil fuels and driving up the price. And then a disingenuous, lying ass video from More Perfect Union, who presents themselves as an educational whatever, is going to come out and tell you that this is the reason this is happening. And never once do they talk about the regulatory environment. Never. I've never seen it in any of their videos talking about the regulatory environment preventing competition in the marketplace. And it's like, we've got to start calling this out, because this is a literal propaganda.
Lena Khan is Biden's head of the Federal Trade Commission. Last year, she and her team began an investigation into the largest oil company in the Permian Basin. It's called Pioneer Natural Resources, and it was trying to merge with ExxonMobil. When the FTC started digging into the merger, it uncovered some pretty shocking evidence that reveals a hidden story behind high oil prices.
The FTC.
So I'll skip to the big scene here. Essentially what they're going to go into, and they're 100% accurate. This guy's reaching out to OPEC, and essentially they're talking about how much oil they should be producing, where they want to keep the price of oil, how much they should be producing to protect the price. He goes on to talk about needing investors, so on and so forth. They do briefly touch on the fact that oil companies were taking massive losses, and the price of oil actually went negative during the pandemic because nobody was driving. So oil companies took massive losses. Another thing we don't talk about, like in this video, they never mentioned the like $70-some billion in losses that the oil companies took then. But anyway, the point is that yes, he's colluding, but you have to remember some things. First, there's a minimum amount. There's a minimum price that oil has to get in order to be financially viable, right? And in other words, it's not profitable under a certain price per barrel. It's a loss to actually drill for oil, transport it, refine it, and get it to market. It's actually a losing proposition. You actually lose money. So controlling production in some ways it's almost necessary, because otherwise if you overproduce, the price collapses to the point where it's not profitable to drill for oil anymore, and then the market dries up. But my point is that at the end of the day, there wouldn't have been able to be collusion between these people in the Permian Basin and these people in between OPEC had we not been sanctioning all these other places where massive amounts of oil are being produced, like Venezuela, like Russia. So at the end of the day, you can talk about this all you want. You can talk about this collusion, and it's illegal. Fine, fine, try them. But can somebody please hold the government accountable for their role in limiting the supply of oil and creating scarcity that didn't otherwise need to exist? It's just, can we do that? Can we be, to some extent, this opportunity to commit this crime, to collude, to control production wouldn't have existed absent government creating a scenario where these people were able to essentially form a small cabal and control the market.